Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. I'm your host, WYNTER, bringing to you yet another wonderful edition of the Economic Briefcase. Before I introduce the topic, Mr. Ndapao, the weather, London weather in Lusaka.
Very productive weather. Very productive weather.
How has been the week?
The week has been good, despite the rains. I thought the rains had finished.
Yeah, the rains. Rains are nice because they bring food on the table. But at this particular moment, maize might go to waste. So, let's hope that we are going to get some dry weather. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather and the rains. We are here to discuss Zambia's economic development and try to find out what is the best model. Now, a lot of people that follow me know my ideology, and there are very few people that are original like me that follow my ideology. And I won't say that ideology, but I think when I introduce this person, that needs no introduction. You are going to know what I'm talking about. Our guest today is Honorable WYNTER KABIMBA. He's former town clerk, I know that. He was town clerk, I think, in Kitwe. He was Minister of Justice, Secretary General of the Patriotic Front. He is the President of the Economic Front, formerly the Rainbow Party. He's basically a seasoned civil servant, public administrator. For those of you that are millennials, those of you that don't know the history of Zambia, today I think is going to be yet another wonderful program where we are going to start from Zambia, those days, now, and where we are going to go in the future. What's the best economic model? Honorable KABIMBA, it's very nice. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me and together with my colleagues, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Before we go and discuss with you, we'll give you some insights on, as our per tradition, the insights on what is happening in the markets. So, Director, give us the rates.
For the market update as of today, the 21st of April 2022, the average exchange rates against major currencies, the kwacha against major currencies. So the dollar closed off selling at 17 kwacha, 47 ingwe. The pound closed off selling at 22 kwacha, 81 ingwe. The euro closed off selling at 19 kwacha, 3 ingwe. The rand closed off selling at 1 kwacha, 14 ingwe. Then the LME prices, the copper closed off selling at $10,326, up by 1.01%. Aluminium closed off selling at $3,287.50, up by 0.57%. Zinc closed off selling at $4,440, up by 0.55%. Lead closed off selling at $2,406.50. That is down by 0.72%. Tin closed off selling at $42,900. That's down by 0.23%. Nickel closed off selling at $33,735. That is up by 0.18%. With the crude oil, WTI crude closed off selling at $104.07, up by 2.48%. Brent crude closed off selling at $109.02. That's an upward adjustment of 2.28%. Then with a few selected food prices, Millie Meal 25 kgs is at 146 at average. Sugar 2 kgs is at 43 kwacha at average as well. 1 kg sugar 27 kwacha. Salt 1 kg 37 kwacha. Cooking oil 5 liters 254 kwacha. Kapenta meda 255 kwacha. Beans meda 130 kwacha. Bread, a loaf of bread 15 kwacha. A tray of eggs 69 kwacha. That's all we had for you on the market update.
Looking at the prices, are we able to eat an egg in the morning? When we started this program, we were looking at 48 kwacha for a unit, for a tray. Now it's at 69.
69, yes.
It's I don't know where we are going. Anyway, we pray to God. Wonderful, KABIMBA. You look worried.
I look extremely worried.
Yes, you look extremely worried.
To hear that.
Yes. I know a lot of people know you, but as per tradition on our program, we try to, to give a brief background, because we are dealing with a country that is very youthful, and we believe that for people to know where they are going, they should have at least a history of where they are coming from.
Yeah.
A lot of people just knew Arabi when he passed away. They never knew he was in the UN. They never knew he was, in brackets, president of Namibia. They didn't know it. So when we mention Honorable WYNTER KABIMBA, a lot of people might not know. They just know, man, he started in PFO. But the person himself starts from a long way. So who is WYNTER KABIMBA?
Well, thanks. You have covered a bit of my CV. I was born in Mumbo district. I went to a primary school in Livingstone called Libuyu. That's where I started my primary school. So the first language that I actually learned how to read and write was Lozi, and not my local language, not my mother tongue. And then after that, I went to Mumbwa. I went to Kafio Secondary School. From Kafio Secondary School,
I'm also a Kafio Boys Secondary School.
Yes, so.
Chitimukulu.
So I was in Livingstone. so you are Koba.
Yes, Koba, yes.
I see.
Yes.
So, and then from there, obviously, I went to, well, not obviously, but from there, luckily, I went to Unza. You know, I said to President HH, you know, one day, I said, I don't know why you like talking about it. You know, I'm a village, as if you're the only one from the village. I also come from the village. So there's nothing, you know, of really grandstanding about being a village boy. I hated cattle, you know, like him. And at Unza, I studied law. The alternative, if I hadn't gone into law school, I wanted to study French, because I actually speak, you know, French and English. So I'm bilingual in terms of international languages, and I am multilingual in terms of Zambian languages. So I speak a number of Zambian languages. So I wanted to study French, and if I had not studied French, I wanted to study history. I've been a very keen student of history. You know, from the time when I got into school in Form 1 at Kafue, I got prizes in history and French up to Form 5. I still keep, you know, in my library some of the books which were given to me during the prize giving day or awards at school. After I left Unza in 1981, I joined Lusaka City Council as a junior, well, they used to call us then senior legal assistant, you know, before I got called to the bar. Then I was called to the bar. Interestingly, my law class at Unza included, you know, ECL. Okay. Yes, ECL, Trevor Mwamba, the president of UNIP now. Yes. Okay, Hilda Chibomba, the president of the Constitutional Court. Yes. Okay, Judge Katanekwa, you know, who is judge of the High Court now. So that was my team. And so we have known each other from that time till now. I joined Lusaka City Council, and I found the place very, very conducive. And I think one of the reasons why I eventually became a politician when I had nothing to do, you know, was because of the environment that I was in Lusaka City Council. You know, during that time, you know, there were UNIP councillors, very humble guys, you know, not very educated. Most of them couldn't even express themselves, you know, in the so-called the official language in the council.
So that was the time you were at the Lusaka City Council?
That was the time when I was
governor by then?
The governor, when I joined Lusaka City Council, was late Simon Mweo.
Okay.
Who was also managing director for Zambia National Building Society. And then in 1980, if you remember, the government passed the Local Administration Act, which converted the mayors then to governors.
Governors, yes.
Yeah. And then the composition of the council changed, because then at that time we had the elected councillors, we had the, you know, the governors as an appointee of the president, not elected. We had the district intelligence officer for Lusaka. He was a councillor. We had a representative from the Zambia Air Force, and we had the representative from the Zambia Army. So you had the security wings represented, you know, at the council. And then we had a few part functionaries. You know, William Banda now was actually district youth chairman.
Okay.
You know, for Lusaka. So my interaction with all these guys, you know, at that level, you know, that leadership, community leadership across Lusaka, I think gave me the inspiration, you know, because I mean, can you imagine you could deal with the problems like you are speaking to a guy from Kabulonga, you know, now, or Sunningdale, and 5 minutes later there's a guy from Chibolia in front of you. So you have to navigate yourself from the Kabulonga elite, you know, to the Chibolia man, you know, and listen to their program, you know, to their problem. So I think in due course I got interested. A lot of my colleagues joined the parastatal companies then, but for some reason I found myself stuck, you know, with the Lusaka City Council. In 1990, when MMD just got off the ground, you know, and things were heating up, a lot of my colleagues, you know, decided to join MMD. I refused. You know, I was not a member of UNIP per se, but that time, if you were, there was only one party, so
yes.
You were
everybody by default.
By default, you were a member of UNIP.
Yes.
And for some reason, I'll be honest with you and the viewers out there, I didn't trust the team that I saw in the MMD. It was composed mainly of guys that Kaunda had locked up, you know, for drug trafficking, you know, and things like that. And I just didn't see any leadership character in them. You know, so when the vote came on the 31st of October, I think, I decided to vote for Kaunda. I didn't vote for Chiro. And that decision has, you know, remained with me. I've been so proud that I was right.
That you made that vote.
Yeah, that I made the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I made the right decision. Kaunda lost, but I've been so proud that with the premonition, you know, these guys that I didn't trust because I knew many of them turned out, you know, just to be, you know, agents of imperialism. You know, they brought in the IMF. They didn't achieve, you know, anything. You know, they were moving around with the pocketers, you know, in their jackets, you know, speaking very good English. But beyond that, there was no service that they rendered, you know, to the local communities. At least the people of Kalingalinga that I dealt with, Mandevu, Chiwolia, you know, they remained the same. So these were opulent guys, affluence. You know, some of them had trained, you know, abroad, you know. But in terms of the leadership, you know, for local communities, they failed, you know, very, very badly. So in 1995, I think 1995, I decided to leave the council. That's another long story. You know, I had a big fight, you know, with the former, the late minister, Benny Mwinga.
Yes.
You know, over corruption issues. So I disagreed with him. I decided I'm not going to do your bidding. And the council was suspended as a result of that. When the council was reinstated after about a year and a half, the minister made a press statement that the council would be reinstated but minus the town clerk. So I was singled out that I was the only one who was not going to go back to the council. So the press came to me and said, what do you think about this decision? I said, well, I also don't want to work with a corrupt minister, so we can keep the council. Then I decided I would go and set up my legal practice. So I decided to set up WM KABIMBA and Company as a legal practice. And I started practicing law. Then, obviously, my interest was still, in politics. So I joined Dini Mungomba after I had been fired by Chuluba. So
ZADECO then, eh?
ZADECO then.
Yes.
Then I became vice president in ZADECO. Then ZADECO merged with the BY's Republican Party.
Yes.
We formed a political party called the ZRP,
Yes,
the Republican
Republican
Party.
Honorable Masebo, I think, was also in that party.
Yes,
no?
Sylvia
Yes.
came, she was running an NGO.
Yes.
So we co-opted her in. Then Guy Scott came in with the Ben Capital.
Yes.
They led Ben Capital. They had formed the Lima Party.
Lima Party, yes.
They had formed the Lima Party. So there was Sylvia there, Guy and Ben Capital, Dean and myself, then BY and and then we teamed up, together. So that really is the bedrock of my political career. After that, I've never looked back. I always tell people, if you disengage me from politics, I think I will die. So it's like my oxygen now. I love it. I enjoy local leadership. I've continued to do the little that I can do, even in my village, in my area, and that is the reason why when Michael Satawan in 2011, the first thing that I did was to go to him and I said, can you please give us a district? And that is how Shibunji district was created.
So Lima Party, then the late President Michael Sata creates a party, PF.
Yeah.
Yes.
Old Michael creates PF after his bid, to become MMD president, and is dribbled by Chiluba, and he gets upset. He feels let down because he had been singing Chiluba's third term.
Yes.
So and he thought that with that kind of loyalty to FTJ, he would anoint him, to be president of MMD. And when the time came, as Chiluba would put it, he was a master dribbler. He dribbled Michael, and Michael was the left wire, as they call it now. So Michael got upset, went and formed the PF. I didn't join PF immediately, but then later, Guy Scott came to me and said, you don't know anybody, around. But let me also just make mention of this, that in 2006, just before the elections, the presidential general election in 2006, a meeting was held in my office. So Sylvia was there, led Ben Capital was there, and others. Those of us that had come from, that were in ZRP.
Yes.
And we had to make a decision, where we wanted to go. Did we want to go to MMD, which was then thriving? Levy, the president, he was, related to my wife, he was my tribesman, if you want to say so. Or, and the majority of my colleagues said they would go to, in fact, they said we should go to MMD. I declined. I said, I'm not going to MMD. So they asked me, where do you want to go? I said, I'll go to PF. And they said, why? I said, that's where my friends are. That's where Michael is. A man I've known for a long time. That's where Guy Scott is. you know, and others. There's a principle which I've learned from that decision, you know, that politics is better played with the people that you know.
That you know, yes.
Yeah. Don't get into politics with the strangers, because you'll be let down. You burn your fingers, you know. And it is one of the reasons why I've refused to join UPND today. Okay? When Andy decided, you know, to get into politics, there are 4 people that he invited to his house. Andy Mazok. It was the late Levi Mwanawasa, the late Edward Shamana, who was an uncle of mine, the late Ben Kapita, and myself. I was the youngest in that group and the only one surviving. Everybody's late, including Andy himself. And we went to his house for breakfast, and he said to us, you know, I want to join politics. I'm retiring from Anglo. He was retiring at the age of 55. He had 10 more years to go, and he decided he would get into politics. So the first draft constitution of the UPND, I drafted it myself.
Okay.
Yes. The first draft constitution, I drafted it myself. And one day we went for a meeting at one of the Mopani rooms at the Pamozi, and there was a guy called Nakalonga. He's late. When we sat in that meeting, I was to present the draft UPND constitution so that we discuss it. Andy had said, I'd shown it to Andy, and Andy said, this looks good, take it to the committee. So we sit in that Mopani room, and we just about to get started. Then Nakalonga makes a comment, you know, and he says, you see, the problem, Winter, is that we don't trust you in this group because you are too close to Microsoft. Because everything, you know, we believe that, or we suspect that everything that we are going to discuss here, you'll be taking that information to Michael. So I told him, I said, if you went to SATA and said that about me, he will tell you that's not the Winter I know. But if that's what you guys think, I said, you can, you know. So I got up, picked up my folder, and I walked out. And that was the last time, you know, I ever, you know, or had some kind of association with the UPND. When Andy heard that, you know, he called an uncle, you know, or an uncle of mine, you know, and myself to his house. And he said to my uncle, you know, I want you to speak to this nephew of yours because I want him, you know, in the party. You know. So I looked at my uncle. I said, is that the reason why you have come? And my uncle was quiet. So I said, nobody runs my life. So I made a decision, and I'm not going back. I've never gone back to UPND. You know? Even if I hear that UPND has formed government in heaven, I don't think I'll be part of it. So
fast forward 2011, you have been credited to create one of the most sophisticated PVT system, bringing Sanit to the Patriotic Front, creating structures. The people on the grassroots said you basically ran, that was your campaign, 2011.
Yes.
How was it?
It was you know, something that we did in a very strategic manner. When I became Secretary General of PF, firstly, see, let me point this out. When what was his name? I think
Chanda.
No, Chimumbo. When Chimumbo resigned, you know, he was MP for Nchanga, you know, and he resigned as Secretary General of PF. Michael Sata wanted me to be the Secretary General. So he called me and said, I would like you to be the SG. I declined. I said, no, I'm too busy. I had one of my daughters then who was studying, my younger daughter was studying at the University of Manchester. You know, the fees, you know, were getting crazy, you know, with the economy in the UK. And I said to Michael, you know, I'd rather continue with my legal practice, you know, and and get to educate my daughter. So he said, then what do we do? I said, why don't we get Edward Mumbi, the late? Yes. I said, get Edward, let's appoint Edward Mumbi to be the SG. And Michael said, but he has no experience, you know. I said, I'll help him. I'll help him, you know, with the writing minutes, you know, and the stuff like that. So Edward Mumbi is appointed as the Secretary General of the party. At the end of that election, there was this campaign against Edward Mumbi, you know, that he had betrayed Michael, you know, and that kind of thing. And finally, Edward Mumbi resigns as SG, and resigns actually from PF. So there's a vacancy again. Michael Sata calls me and says, I want you to be SG. Again, I turned down the offer. I said, no, sir. No, let's see if we can find somebody else. So about, actually, that's not 2006, 2008, following the by-election of Levi Mwanawasa. Yeah, not 2006. So about January 2009, Edward Mumbi resigns. So from January 2009 to March, April 2009, yeah, to April, there was no SG. So one day, Michael Sata calls me and says, where are you? I said, I'm in the office. He says, come over here. So I drive over to Farmer's house, and he said to me, today I've not come to ask you whether or not you should be the SG. I'm appointing you as SG of PF. So I remember my answer. I said, well, I'm your disciple. If that is your wish, then I will not resist it anymore. And he said, you are not going away, sit there as I do the letter. So the letter was done, and it was given to me. I found at that stage that there were no disciplinary rules in the PF. There was no disciplinary code or regulations. You know, I found that there was no manifesto, you know, in PF. You know, there was just no document of any kind.
It was just a group.
It was just a grouping. It was just a grouping, you know. So I said, I remember in two Central Committee meetings, the issue of, there were no electoral regulations, you know, how do you run elections within the party. There was nothing. So I offered to MCS, I said, you know, why don't you allow me to draft, you know, these documents? Because I believe in order. I couldn't fit in a situation where I don't know what a misconduct is, I don't know what you know this is. You know, I just found it difficult to fit in that kind of arrangement. So I offered that if I could be allowed, you know, to draft the documents. And he said, please go ahead. So I drafted the electoral regulations for PF, which are still in use today. I drafted, you know, the disciplinary regulations for PF. You know, and when we got
as well as the constitution.
No, the constitution was already in place. You know, it was difficult to read, but at least there was some document called the constitution, because it was a requirement. You know, when you are registering, you know, the party, that there must be some semblance of a constitution. In one of the things that was very clear, you know, after the by-election in 2008, was that you know, PF and Michael Sata were still getting zeros at certain polling stations. You know, zero. You know, in other words, there was nobody that had heard about PF. So when I became, you know, SG, the first thing that I embarked on was this issue of creating structures and also maintaining registers of the party. So so that we know exactly where our members are, and we know exactly who our members are, where and who. So I got a team in place and we started building that. Then I introduced a position which was then called the district political secretary, which was actually an import from UNIP. So the DPS was like a party auditor, and we put them on a small salary. But actually, it was not even a salary; it was an allowance of something like 500 kwacha to go around these structures every month, and submit reports. So the structure started building up. When we got to 20, in fact, before that, there's another important development that took place. After the 2008 by-election, and Michael lost to RB by 35,000 votes, we held a central committee, and the first central committee meeting that we held, the anger within the room, and the contributions, to the debate was that Michael had won the election, and the election had been stolen. And then the central committee decision was that we should petition the results. And when we looked at 35,000 votes, we decided, if we go for the recount, one by one ballot, I'm sure we can cover this 35,000. Then we went to the Supreme Court and filed a presidential petition, and we were seeking an order to nullify the election, okay, and we also sought an order for a recount. And in our thinking, the view we took was that the Supreme Court would say, let's do the recount first before the petition is heard. We were shocked when the Supreme Court sat. They decided, no, we can only hear the application for a recount after the main petition has been heard. So I went back to Mr. Sata, and I said to him, sir, we are in the opposition, and this is 2008. The elections are just about 2.5 years. These guys, you know how our courts, work. They can drag, this petition, and we'll be tied, to this petition and do nothing in the field, and before we know it, we'll be in 2011. So he said to me, what do you think? I said, let's abandon the petition. And he said, but Rupiah Banda is going to ask for costs. And I said, once we abandon the petition, the man will be so happy that he will not even think about the costs. And I was right. And I was right. So when the next hearing came, I went to to our legal team, and I said, guys, this is what the president has said. I didn't say I've told the president. I said, this is what the president says, and these are instructions. Let's abandon the petition. So the matter came up, and the Supreme Court was shocked. The guy who was leading the team stood up and said, we are abandoning this petition. And the judge said, are you sure? They said, yes. I said, okay. So that was the end, and we filed the necessary documents. We never heard from RB's lawyers about costs. So I was right. That the man was so happy, that he was not being harassed, about it. So we then moved on. The other thing that I did in my capacity as the Secretary General of the party, I went again to Michael Sata. I worked very closely with Michael as the president. We forged a very good, relationship as the president and the Secretary General of the party. So at each time, I went back to the president and sought authority. I offered, my idea, and then I said to the president, sir, do you agree with me? So I went to him and I said, would you allow me to form, what I call the strategy and campaign committee as we, cascade to 2011? And he said, yes. So again, I went and listed the names down of the people that I knew, including some academics from UNZA, I submitted the names to him, he cleared them. Then we started the meeting, and I said to them, guys, if we are going to understand where we are going, let's deal with where we are coming from. What has happened in the past? So I said, what we do is let's collect all the results from 2001. Results for councillors, MPs, and presidential results. So we assigned a couple of our colleagues to go to ECZ, and they went and collected these results. So we said, let's plot, the results on the graphs. So we plotted, MMD graph, plotted the UPND graph. We plotted, mainly three, MMD, PF, and the UPND. What we discovered after that was that the MMD graph had gone up, reached its peak, and it had started going down. And so was the UPND graph. So the only graph which was still going up was actually the PF graph, meaning that PF was still growing, and they had every chance to win the election. So we are very happy with the situation that we saw. Then I went back to Mr. Sata. I said, can you please allow me to set up what we call what I was to call what was the name that it was a center where we archived all this information that was coming from the data collection center. Yes, it was called. So we set up a data collection center, and we rented a flat, along Manchinchi Road. So we set up, computers there. We started meeting there, and I employed two ladies to start plotting, on the computer, getting the data from the physical data, and then posting it on the computer, so that we could follow our members during the election. And one of the conditions we gave was that we said to the district political secretaries and provincial that start with the people that are registered voters to put in the register. So two ladies were employed, and then they started posting this information, this data on the computer, and we got close to election in 2011. When we got close to that election, I can't remember who came to me and said, then in the MMD, not even in the MMD, there was this thing about the PVT, parallel vote tabulation, which had come as an animal, new animal on the political landscape. I can't remember who came to me and said, do you know that there's a company in Kenya, that is very good at this PVT. So I said, what are the details? So they gave me the details of the company. So we sent an email there. The guys confirmed that they had actually done that with Raila Odinga in the previous election. So I went to Mr. Sata again, and I said, I would like to send a team to Nairobi to go and meet these guys. So we sent a team. It was led by Dr. Simbiakola. He was the team leader, and two other guys. So they went to Nairobi, and I said to them, go and ask these guys to do a dry run of the system. I don't understand computers very well. Come back and confirm with me that you are happy that this thing is workable. They came back after a week and said, yes, it works. So I said, okay, so we can do it here. He said, yes. I said, have they given you a quote? He said, yes. When we looked at the quotation, it was $250,000.
Wow. That
they were looking for. So I said, we can't raise this money. So I called them. I said, guys, what would be the basic, just the basics that you would put in place that we can use, during this coming election? We can't raise this amount of money. So they said, oh, we can do it. you know, I said, that can give us a result. They said, yes. At that time, MMD had said anybody that he was going to engage in PVT would be committing an offense.
Yes.
So we had to make sure that it was done in such a secretive manner, stealthily, that nobody in the party knew where the data collection center was. Not even Michael Sata, not even Guy Scott. It was just myself and a small team that I had put in place. When the election came, we had to bring 2 of these guys from Kenya. But then they were they were also coming in with some computers and servers. So we said to ourselves, how do they come in, at the airport? There's just no way they're going to allow them to. So I spoke to the guys on the phone. I said, do you know how you come in? I said, you come by road. I said, is it possible? They said, yes. So they came by road from Kenya into Tanzania. When they got into Tanzania, they called and said, we're in Tanzania. So I said, okay, get to the border. So they got to the border, and I sent a team of 2 of my boys and gave them a vehicle. And I said, you drive, to the border, go and use the bush. That's one of the offenses I committed during that time. I said, don't use the border, or if you are going to use the border as you are going into Tanzania, but when coming out, find the Kanjira Kamusanga. Don't you? So they went there, I gave them a vehicle, gave them money, they went and loaded these servers and computers and drove all night. And I couldn't sleep that night because I had to wait. At every point I told them, call me and just tell me you are safe. The same data collection center, I'd put some beds there for the 2 boys, and mattresses, and put, a cooker there, and those guys arrived. About 04 in the morning, they called me and said, we have arrived. That's the time when I went to sleep. So I slept for something like 2.5 hours. In the morning, I went there. I found these 2 Kenyan boys, and I chatted with them. They had breakfast, and I said, guys, we are on with the job now. They said, don't worry, it will be done. So I was very happy. The only fear that I had, I said, if the intelligence pick up this, then I'm gone.
Yes.
I said, these 2 boys are in trouble, then I'm also gone. So I was praying hard, that information doesn't leak out. You won't believe it. These boys never got out of that place until the day when the election results were announced. They never got out of that place. So what we did, we got a screen and posted it at Michael Sata's house, and it was connected to the data collection center. So he said you can follow the results, as they trickle. On Thursday, which was the 22nd, I think, over lunch hour, I got a call from the data collection center. One of the guys who was there is now in New York, called me and said, you won't believe it, we have won the election. I said, you can't be serious. He said, yes. He says, where are you? I said, I'm at home. He said, let me bring the computer printout there. When we got the computer printout, we had results at that stage for 137 constituencies. ECZ still had the election results for 116 constituencies. So the PVT system we are using was way ahead of ECZ. And they were to come and announce the next batch of results around 15 hours. So I looked at and the boy said to me, even if there were 13 constituencies now that time, out of 150, they said even if MMD got 100% in the remaining 13 constituencies, they would still not catch up with PF. So it was not possible that they would get 100% in all the 13 constituencies. So we are very certain that we had won the election. So I jumped into the vehicle, I drove to Mr. Sata's house, and I found him seated in a chair, and I said, congratulations, you are actually president of this country. And the man looked at me like a statue. He couldn't be. He was so used to losing that even this time around, you know, he thought he was losing. And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "We have won the election, sir." And he couldn't believe it. So I said to him, "Here's a computer printout. Can you allow me to write a letter to ECZ chairperson and say to them that these are our results, so that they don't manipulate the results." That is if they did that.
So out of the 16 and your 16, was there any difference at that point?
Yeah, it was. We were ahead by something like 150,000 votes. Mike was ahead in terms of presidential. So I rushed to my office, drafted a letter to Irene Mambirima, then as the chairperson of ECZ. I didn't say we have won. I just said, you know, please find here to attach our results from, you know, for the 137 constituencies. So I gave it to one of my boys, you know, to take to ECZ. Then there was a guy who was in the EU observer team, who was a lawyer, you know, from Ireland. You know, I got along with him, you know. So I called him, you know, and I said to him, "What results do you guys have?" You know, and he said to me, "Winter, I can't tell you the results." He says, "Why are you asking?" I said, "Because we have won, you know, this election." And he said, "Who told you?" I said, "Our system has told us." And he says, "Maybe you are right." He didn't say you are right. He says, "Maybe you are right." So I was very sure, you know, that we had won. So when they came to announce the results at midnight on that day,
I remember it was around 24 somewhere.
Yes, about 1 a.m.
It was tense.
Yes. All of us were sitting on edge.
Yes.
You know, as to why, you know, they were not announcing the results. But before that, after I showed Michael the results, I went back again in the evening, and I said to him, "When they announce the results, please do not come out of the house. Remain indoors. They are going to send, you know, state security, okay, to come and surround the house and guard you, because now you are president-elect, but you don't venture out of the house, because anything can happen.
Yes.
Can happen to you." And I remember him saying to me, you know me, when you advise me, I listen. I said, "Please." And that's exactly what happened. When they announced the results, you know, they just heard, you know, something like commotion outside. They had sent, you know, police there and OP, you know, to go and guard his house, and the man didn't come out of the house until the following morning. So obviously there was a frenzy, you know, all over the country, as you remember, and all of us were happy.
Yes.
So that's how it was done. I had to commit an offense by smuggling people in.
I'm sure that's what solidified your bond between you and
Michael Sata. Well, we had this bond, you know, that went back, you know, 30 years even before that.
Coming to the economic side of things.
Yeah.
You have experience from the Kaunda time, the Chiruba times, the Arab, the Manawasas, the Arabi. What do you think, what mistakes do you think we have made in the past in terms of economic development? I know Kaunda did a lot. That one will never take away from him. Zimco, Indeco, Findeco, Mindeco, all those things he created.
Yeah.
When you guys came in, you created IDC. Where do you think we got it wrong? We were coming very well after independence. Then we did multi-party. Things became bad. For those that don't know, things became bad. So where do you think we are coming from? We are, and where are we going?
Well, I'll tell you what I saw during that time. It's exactly what is happening now. There is an adage, you know, that history doesn't repeat itself. But I remember reading somewhere that no, it actually does, except that it does so in different circumstances. So what we had at that time was, firstly, as you remember very well, we had this dismantling or the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
You know, which had projected itself as an alternative economic socialist model. You know, but it became so large, you know, to the extent that it couldn't hold itself together. You know, I remember reading one article in the National Geographic that one of the reasons why the Roman Empire collapsed was that it became so large and it became unmanageable. Okay, and that's what became of the Soviet Union. So it collapsed as an economic model. So all the third world countries, you know, that we are looking up to that model for development had no leadership now. And quickly, you know, the Western countries, you know, we talk about the state capture now. You actually have, you know, imperialist capture. So they captured Chiluba, you know, and his team, you know, and told them, you know, you see, socialism doesn't work. Look at the shortages that have been there, you know, and that kind of thing. And what works is the IMF program, you know, privatization, you know, etc., etc. And what we saw was rampant privatization. What we saw was a team of young guys, you know, economists from Washington DC. You know, they were actually called the Harvard Boys. So they were given an office at the Ministry of Finance. They actually started running the economy. And because Kaunda had privatized the mines, you know, you remember the history, which Saddam's documents, you know, very well, you know, how they wanted the British South African company compensated by the Zambian government, you know, when UNIP came to power and they were demanding for a lot of money, you know, until Kaunda decided, I will not buy this, I'll just nationalize it, you know, after the Matero or watershed speech of 1967-68. So they walked away, but they didn't disappear. So they found an opportunity to come back. And these guys don't come back in a vacuum. They must have local agents. So the local agents that they found were our own people, Chiluba and the team. So they baptized them, you know, into this, you know. And one of the things that we're very good at as Africans and Zambians in particular is that we lack original thinking. So we want copying and paste. Okay? Martin Luther King says, you know, there is nothing that pains, you know, some people as having to think. So thinking can be painful, you know, to lie in bed and think. It can be painful and it can be taxing. So you'd rather go for easy solutions, you know. So Kaunda had put in place what is obviously state capitalism, socialism, but the state owned everything yes, on behalf of the people. Okay, I mean, when you look at the Lands Act up to today, it says all land shall vest in the president. Okay, you know, you look at the Forestry Act, it says all forests, you know, vest in the president. You look at the Mines and Minerals Development Act, you know, all minerals vest in the president. And the president holds you know, these natural resources on behalf of the people. So, but obviously with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the third world countries, you know, lacked an alternative economic model to look at. Okay, there was the tension between Cuba, you know, and Russia. You know, China was going its own. The Chinese in 1989, they had just started implementing, you know, the opening up and reforms, which they had started in 1978, led by Deng Xiaoping. So they themselves were still in that infant stage. So we get into this neoliberal arrangement, you know, of market forces, you know, do away with the NAMBOD, do away with the, you know, parastatals, you know. Government should have no business in business. So we are told. You know, a complete fallacy. You know, the American government is still in business.
Yes.
The British government is still in business. They still own, you know, parastatals. Then they come here, you know, and say to this team of guys, you know, that you have no business, so privatize everything. So obviously, everybody, you know, parastatals are privatized, you know, assets are sold, you know, for the song, and everybody is so ecstatic about this new environment, you know, so-called freedom, you know. After all, Kaunda was a dictator, you know, and you know, everybody was arrested, you know, by Kaunda, even for genuine reasons. You know, I was reading today on social media that there's an action by those guys that were arrested with HH for treason, and they have sued the state, you know. So that kind of thing started unraveling, you know, that everybody was arrested by Kaunda, locked up for mandrax, you know, for whatever, you know. They became heroes. So, and obviously the Zambian people, you know, didn't have any direction. They were still confused. You know, they had to navigate, you know, from this unique arrangement. You know, there was, you know, cooking oil was on the market, you know, or detergents were on the market, you know, from South Africa, you know, and said, wow, you know, this is maybe this is you know, the thing. So we ran with that model for 25 years under MMD. We go through the IMF structural adjustment program, which ended up, you know, yielding total disaster. Poverty levels, you know, kept on rising. Unemployment levels kept on rising. The healthcare system kept on, you know, crumbling. The educational system was crumbling. So there is just no positivity that anybody could point at during that period. So we ended up in total misery. You know, people were dying out of depression. You know, the mines, you know, guys that bought them didn't want to have anything to do with the sport. They didn't want to have anything to do with any welfare system. The miners were used to, you know, to be given a bag of mini meal every month, you know, and they were living. I mean, when I went to Kitwe as town clerk, you know, every 2 vehicles in Kitwe belonged to the mines. You know, so
Kitwe was Kitwe.
Kitwe was
when you go to Nkana East, it was Kitwe.
It was Kitwe.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you look at you know, the surroundings of the homes. You know, the Kitwe was Kitwe. You know, and everything just started in nose diving. You know, even those people that were retrenched, they couldn't be paid on time. You know, and so I think that is where things started going wrong. Then Chilo, of course, makes a bid, you know, for the 3rd term. You know, or he fails in that bid. He goes and he invites the Levy back. He was almost joining UPND at that time. He gets him back. And Levy was a lawyer. He was actually not a politician per se. You know, so obviously he tried his best, you know, to put this thing back on track, but it was difficult. So, getting back to your question, that is where things started going wrong. But the blame doesn't lie squarely, you know, on those that sell or have sold this economic model, you know, to us. It also lies on us. We should take responsibility that we have politicians that are Western trained, you know, they've read, you know, all these Western neoliberal policies and the textbooks, you know. I always laugh, you know, when I listen to our economists, you know, from Economic Association of Zambia, you know, physical this, micro this, macro this. And I said to myself, oh guys, you know, yes, you know, the balance is good, you know, and it sounds sweet in the ears, but can that translate into alleviating poverty, you know, and making sure that the guy in Chibori has clean drinking water, you know. It reminded me of what Nyerere said at one time. Nyerere said, look, you know, if you went to the United States, he says the level of development is seen in the number of skyscrapers you see in New York, infrastructure, you know. And he says, if you came to Tanzania, you know, the development that I want is clean water for a Tanzanian citizen in the village, to make sure that a Tanzanian kid, you know, can go to school, to make sure that they can access health care. And Mwalimu Nyerere said, that is what is development for me and Tanzania. Okay? So, and I think Nyerere was right. So we ought to define, you know, what development is. In our own terms.
Okay? On our own terms.
Yes.
So, I wanted to ask, what would have been the best approach in 1991? Let's say by the previous government then and the incoming government, which was the MMD, what would have been the best approach that would have been taken so that we couldn't get to the point that we had reached during the MMD days?
Well, that was, you know, that was a dichotomy, you know, which existed then. It was difficult for MMD to be half MMD and half unique. Okay. That would have been a contradiction. Is, you know, what MMD did was really trying to erase anything unique and anything Kaunda.
Let me say here, look, I've seen it before.
Yes.
In 1991, it was impossible to even go and meet Kaunda.
It was impossible.
Kaunda was, they
even just to mention his name. Even just to say one Zambia, one nation. They started saying that much later.
We saw that with Chiruba when he was not betrayed, maybe when he fought with Manawas.
Yes.
Chiruba also, it was like that. He had no friends.
Yes.
Arabi, it was the same.
Yes.
We are seeing it now. When are we going to learn, or when are we going to change? Because we actually believe that, I don't know, Kaunda stole $7 billion. Arabi also stole, I don't know how much, Chiruba stole what. And now we have these things that are going. Antelopes being confiscated and...
Look, the problem with our politics is this. You know, I've coined the word. I call this politics of subtraction. Okay?
So not politics of continuity.
No,
of
subtraction.
Of good policy.
Okay, so if Japao is president, then all that I need to do is go to, you know, to a rally and say, you see, the problem that you have in this country is that you have a tall president. What you need is a short one for the country to move forward. And everybody, hey, you know. So you keep on subtracting. If he introduced, you know, some policy which is not working, all that I have to do is to convert it, you know, say the opposite. And say, me, when I come to power, you know, this is what I shall do. Okay? That's all. So if for example, is giving out 25 kgs of minimum, you know, and people are grumbling, but me have 10 children, I can't do with the 10 kg, you know, 10 kg, 25 kg in a month. All that I need to do to convince them is to say, me, I'll give you, you know, 50 kg. So nobody has concrete ideas, you know. I mean, I'll say this, you know, that I shudder myself to see that, you know, the president now reports at 9 hours, and he knocks off at 16 hours or 17. Third world country, you report at 9, and you knock off at 17 hours, or because what I have read, you know, about the other countries, when Fidel Castro and friends, you know, and Che Guevara and guys took over, you know, Cuba in you know, in January of 1959, the guys were spending sleepless nights in offices. Sleepless nights. You can't sleep as a third world president. You can't afford, to come out wearing a puka dam, jacket and shirt, and looking, so office-like, Where in God's, world would you find that time? You have so many problems, You are supposed to be aging, but in 7 months' time now, HH would be looking 3 years older than he is, but he's looking younger. Why? Because he's having a nice sleep. That's where the problem is. So you ought to get serious with this issue of what are the problems that confront a third world economy. Define, the problems. Define the sectors. Go into agriculture, and say, what is it that is wrong with our agricultural system? Not what is it that they do in South Africa. Not what is it that they do in the Ukraine. But what are the social conditions obtaining here about this situation? The other thing that, really works against us is this issue of Zambians being peripheral participants in the economic activities of our country. Okay? When Kaunda talked about Zambianization, he was right. Give the economy to the Zambians to run. Okay? And the the opposite of that is Zambians are spectators. The mines are owned by large-scale mining companies. They don't pay tax, like Archbishop Alec Banda said, 2 days ago, they have been given tax holiday. The first thing that HH does, is to say to them, don't pay any minimum royalty. They're exempted from paying electricity tariffs, and yet they use, they're the users of electricity more than any other industry in the world. You and I use electricity for cooking, and powering the geyser, So they use more power than all of us, but they're exempted from payment for that power, and that is in the agreement. That's a problem. I read a book, by a guy called Tom Burgess. It's entitled The Looting Machine. And on the chapter in Zambia, he said mine workers in Zambia, mining employees of all those mining companies on the copper belt, they pay more tax to the Zambian government than the mining companies. How in God's name would any sober government allow that? That is the government of the people. The mining company, go and look at how much they get paid, a pittance. But even as they receive those slave wages, they still pay more tax, aggregated, more than the mining companies. And somehow, those of us that aspire for leadership, we don't see anything wrong, with that. So what we have now, and I think this is good, we have another model, that China is coming up.
Coming up, yes.
So we have another, alternative development model, that we can look at. From the time when the Chinese started this opening up and the reforms, within 30 years, China has been able to uplift over 400 million of its people out of poverty. And this is empirical evidence.
And this is the model that has just has worked.
And this is the model. And somehow, we are told this doesn't work. We are told, because the Chinese don't hold elections. Okay? Elections in the manner in which elections are held in the United States or in the West. Okay? Lula da Silva, the Brazilian leftist, leader, as you know. Within 10 years of his 2 terms in office, the government uplifted 13 million Brazilians out of poverty. the whole population of Zambia at that time. Okay? And then you saw how the West fought, you know, they kicked him out, you know,
he was imprisoned.
He was imprisoned, you know, they put, you know, this chap who is there now was a very good friend of Trump, you know, he himself is accused of corruption and that kind. And I'm just praying to God that this October, Lula da Silva, you know, wins the election again. So it has been done, and this evidence is empirical, it is tangible, that 13 million Brazilians were uplifted out of poverty within a period of 10 years. And yet, in the period of 58 years in Zambia, our poverty levels are still rising.
They are actually going down.
Okay? Our unemployment levels are still rising. And somehow we are told, you know, let the IMF come in, and with the IMF coming in, you know, things will be, you know, will be all right. We had the IMF in Zambia before. We've been members of the IMF since 1965.
So is that a suggestion to change our government system, our governance system?
Yes, I think our governance system must be predicated on an economic system that really would reverse, you know, this economic model.
You are watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Our guest today is Honorable WYNTER KABIMBA. We are discussing national economic development, and we are just discussing which type of model, economic model, we should pursue. We've been living with Bretton Woods system since I don't remember, but the way my grandmother used to live in the village, Kwakalongola, that's the way the people live there. We are going for a short break, and when we come back, we are going to open the phone lines. You're able to call us or send us messages on the number that is appearing below the screen. You're watching Camnet TV. See you soon. You're watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Our guest today is Honorable WYNTER KABIMBA, President of the Economic Front. Director, you can give us some messages for those that are watching us from YouTube, Topstar, and everywhere. You can call in on the numbers on the screen. First message. Mr. President, I've always admired you. You are a principled man and always truthful to what you believe in. Please keep it up. Share with the public your number so that we join you. Mulenga, Lusaka.
In Lusaka.
WYNTER is very right. I thank God we have such people with such a history. MMD made a mistake by eradicating almost all that UNIP did, and we went back to the 60s with little or no industry. Poverty went up and so was unemployment. Politicking was the order of the day. So much hate and... Good evening. I'm appreciating KABIMBA's contribution to this subject. Please comment on the Rwandan model being undertaken and how we as Zambia could pick up a thing or two. Good evening, our President Kabimba. I am Dorothy from Wansha. Awe mwandi ni fintu na fikosa. Muri balungu na ngutwale chula te ifi. Free education taikwete nobupiri bulo. Wishomwa kuti asambirira nensala. Awe boma ilo keshepo. Ifintu na fidula tuwa Suke. I can read Bemba. You have seen it?
I can see. I can see.
Good evening, Honorable Kabimba. Your political experience is very encouraging, but before 2026 comes, do you think it was right for the UPND to remove subsidy on fuel? And during your time when it comes, will you consider with your colleagues to reintroduce subsidy on fuel? Mr. Shad Kitwe.
Okay.
So those messages. I don't want, you can just comment on.
Yeah, I think this issue, let me just add one other thing, because we are discussing the economic model.
Yes.
One of the things that we really have to take into account is this issue of the banking sector. I have argued, and I take the view, that no country, doc, in the world has ever developed with a foreign banking sector.
No.
No way. The Japanese have not done it, you know, the Germans have not done it. The South Africans, you know, our neighbors here, have not done it. FNB is a South African bank, you know, Stanbic is a South African bank, you know, which one is the other one? FNB, First Quantum, you know, is, you know, ABSA, which is Barclays, which is now ABSA, Amalgamated Bank of South Africa, is the South African bank. So, the banking sector is very important in sustaining your economic development, because only then would you have your enterprises, your upcoming business people, small scale, medium scale, and large scale, have access to finance capital. You know, and this is a drawback, and that's why I get disappointed when I see President HH, you know, to go and open, you know, officiate at the opening of the Standard Chartered Bank, you know, or head office.
Our last Zambian-owned bank was sold, Investrust.
Yes, Investrust, you know, sold, Zanaco, you know, was sold, and you know. So this is another variable, in my little understanding of political economy, that must be revisited by political leaders, you know, if we want to see this economy move forward. You can't have a banking sector that is foreign and you think that that can help you drive your economy. It's just not possible.
You're watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. We have now opened the phone lines. You can call us on the numbers that you are seeing there below the screen. There's a colleague who said, when you form government, are you going to reintroduce subsidies?
Yes, there is no, you know, there are subsidies in America. Okay? When in 1989, I read somewhere, when in 1989 the Soviet Union collapsed, there were wheat farmers in America that had grown wheat and for export, you know, to the Soviet Union. And because the Soviet state had died...
Just hold on, I thought we have the first caller. Your name and where you're calling from? Hello, your name and where you're calling from?
Hello?
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 Hello, Shariam Nakomle Tumina.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm calling you from Mazabuka. Chikanika is my name.
Ngamwamba wadala.
Kawo Tukamamba.
Inha talumbaga party.
Yes, please. I just want to contribute something.
Yes.
We are about to say the old man there is telling us something which is very good. If we can have 35 people who are living in Zambia now, if you got it at every level, then you will be updated. Because they are passing in sense are seeing such leaders who are there, when you have taken up the post or the mantle, you shouldn't become always annoyed. Why? We want people who are working. Yes, we have accepted the free education. We have accepted the other things that the UPND has put in, which is very good. But we are not seeing any companies which are being open.
Yes.
Or we talk about the industries, there's nothing. Okay, we are appreciating when they are opening the things which is PF. When they say they have finished this and they are opening it, we appreciate it. But we want them to do something. Because CDF money, which is our friend, we don't think so it will bring good things to us. Otherwise it will be a problem. Because people they are fighting for it and we are happy. Whatever money will be shared, it won't be put on action. I think I end up there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, there is one comment which has just triggered my thought from what our brother said there. This, you know, this issue of what did he say?
CDF.
No, not CDF. Oh, come on! I felt as but let's deal with the CDF. You know, I was saying to my colleagues, you know, yesterday that if you go to into the history of CDF, it was actually introduced by FTJ, you know, Chiruba, at the time when he was bidding for the third term. So it was one way of him trying to woo support from members of parliament to support his third term bid. I've always argued that if CDF money is intended for development in the district, you have an established organ in the district called the local authority, which has a management team, it has an auditing system, it has an accounting system. Why do you want to sidestep this institution established by law and then create some organ, you know, whose legal foundation is very apt, you know, and vulnerable and susceptible to corruption, with the MP there, and make the whole thing partisan. Okay. The other thing that I argued, you know, Doc, I'll tell you when I was in local government, you know, why we have this kind of structure in it. I used to say to Mr. Sata when he was Minister of Local Government and Housing, what sense does it make that when you come to allocating grants to local authorities, Lusaka must get more than Mazabuka, for example? Why should Lusaka get a higher grant than Chongwe? I thought it would be the other way around. If you want the countryside to develop and accelerate the development, you know, in the countryside, Chongo should be getting a bigger chunk of the grant than Lusaka. Okay, Lufanyama must be getting a bigger chunk of the grant than Ndola. You know? But you find that the opposite. So what we are doing is we are concentrating, you know, so-called development for want of a better term. And the result of that is this rural-urban drift. Why should the youth sit in Rufanyama where there are no employment opportunities? Obviously, they'll go to Ndola. Why should they sit in Masaiti? They'll go to Ndola. Why should somebody live in Chongwe? They'll come to Lusaka. So, it is again this economic model where, you know, which we have adopted way back, you know, from the colonial times, you know, that, you know, Lusaka is established as a city, you know, and therefore established under a charter, and they have given it more money. Well, this is where the president is. This is where the foreign dignitaries, you know, are. You know, somebody who has talked about Rwanda here. Aren't we ashamed? You know, I was watching the visit of or President Paul Kagame, you know, in Livingstone, and you are the ZRA officer there standing up, you know, I think he pandering to Paul Kagame that the system that they are using at ZRA, they are to send their people, you know, to Rwanda to go and get educated, you know, or learn about that system. Rwanda, which faced a genocide in 1994.
We have another caller. Yes, your name and where you're calling from? Yes.
My first suggestion to Zambia, for example, Gopa, Godi, Changa, Changa, Zambia, or maybe the Mazapia. You know, what is the data which are for the second, because anyone, Bambi, but what is the outside, what is someone looking at, pushing it as bad in Zambia. People are funny. We think we have a total that Zambia is better in a draft. God is and Germany. But in some Zambia, they are poor, why? Very true. We especially our goal. Everybody says that Germany. If you are not one, you end up with a couple of ways. Let's see my
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think he's right. Nkani yabene mukamba yo niyazoona. Chamene chivuta mukamba uti kopa ili mwatu muno muziko ya Zambia kwa si yatu. Godi yamene mukamba ili muno muziko mwa Zambia but si yatu. Bamene batenga kopa hiyo, bamene bakumba kopa na godi yamene mukamba na onse bamene yamene mukamba ni bantu bamene watoka kunja. Batenga kopa ija na godi yamende bagulisa kuja kunja. Bapanga budget mawireless amene mugula babwelesa kuno imambo gula mawireless amene bapanga kutoka muri kopa yani ndivyo amene chivuta hicho. So tamene chifunikano kama uti tifune boma ya kuti ibweze mabanki kwa kuti imwe na ine tingabwele pamozi taenda ku banki taenda kukongola ndalama taenda kukumba kopa ija taenda tagulisa ndalama za bwela muzambi. Ndiye vuta amene ilipo amene mukamba hiyo nivazoona.
I think we can pick 2-3 more calls before we wind up. There's a gentleman who, who was saying the Rwandese model. You also spoke about, the Chinese model as the best model. Yeah. What is your stance? I just want to move away. There are issues between Ukraine and okay. I'll ask my question later. Let's pick up this caller. Yes, your name and where you're calling from?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm calling from Kitwe.
Yes.
And my name is Mr. KABIMBA, what you're discussing is really the solution for the country. Zambians have always been left out in every kind of economic activity that has been happening in this country. Talk of the mine, talk of agriculture, we do not even have commercial farmers. Bonds are trade up or brought up from within our country. And even the tourism sector, everything just like foreign companies. So the kind of ideas and program that you talked about, these are the things that will bring the country to one of our stated levels. Now, I wanted to ask you a question. Starting from FMD time, PS time, we have seen questions where, when we talk of empowerment, governments that have been here for have been going around trying to give money, reach out money to the would-be entrepreneurs as a way of
what yet is, according to economic practices, what is the way forward in terms of ensuring that Zambians begin to be participants in terms of modernity, because rather just sitting out money like that. Because that is the bottom of the speech. No entrepreneur so far is able to point out what they have done as a result of them investing money or from whatever was being called as the power fund being dished out from, I don't know, specific openly. We do not know which institution that we are being used to dish out money to the Zambians. What is the way forward about this now?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You see, the problem with our politics is that when people get into power, they worry so much about how they should remain in power rather than deliver. Okay? So all these issues of youth empowerment, women empowerment are actually intended, to patronize these groups of people so that they can vote for me and so that I can remain in power. Because if you are going to get serious, about empowerment, and again, I'll give you this model that I'd introduced in PF. I'd set up an NGO. We registered as an NGO. It was called National Project for Poverty Reduction, NPPR. Okay, and I went, to the council stores. I don't know whether you know it. Behind the Zesco there. I found that place was dilapidated from the time when I was in the council. The structure was falling. I went to the Chinese embassy and I asked, if they could rehabilitate that structure, for us. They had it rehabilitated, and this is what we did. We put up a tailoring training joint outfit there. We also, put in there a computer training, department or section. Then we put also into there a catering training, department. So we are catering for the youth as well as the women. That model amazed the Chinese so much that in 2014, early of 2014, the Chinese vice president came to Zambia and insisted that he wanted you to go and see what we are doing at the NPPR. And we actually had lunch with him there. I was seated next to him and had lunch there. And at the end of that, a gentleman who was in charge, who was running it, as the director, the current member of parliament for Samfia, and Honorable Anthony Kasandu,
yes,
is the one that was running it. They sponsored him to go to Sudan, to go to South Africa, to go to Kenya, and the Chinese said, we want this model replicated in these countries, because it was training the youths. Then I said to, I called a meeting of all the principals from these vocational training colleges, 10 of them. I had a meeting with them. And I said, are you able to give us, as a party, 50 slots, for students for every year? You know what they said to me? They said, we can give you more. Our enrollment capacity is just 40%. Because the Chinese had agreed, we had gotten into an agreement with the Chinese government that they would get 50 students, boys and girls, every year into each one of these colleges. In other words, 500 in a year, to get trained into carpentry, bricklaying, metal fabrication, and all these skills. And the Chinese said, we shall exponentially be increasing, this number as we go. And they were paying for tuition fees and everything. When I was hounded out of PF, or when I left the PF, the Chinese withdrew. And the guys that came in, didn't care about that. The computers were stolen, the cookers were stolen, everything. And they went back, to the same thing that my brother is talking about, the empowerment. Go to Kitwe, give youths, 10 penny, and another, and everybody, hey, 5 penny, and the fellows go and drink.
Director, let's pick the last messages. We can go on and on. Good evening, Honorable Winter KABIMBA. I am always fascinated by your in-depth knowledge of Zambia's political landscape. What book are you currently reading? Because I believe your knowledge on many issues comes with wide reading. NN Lusaka. Good evening. I'm appreciating KABIMBA's contribution to this subject. Please comment on the Rwandan model being undertaken and how we as Zambia could pick a thing or two. Samba from Mondola. Mr. KABIMBA, what has Kaja mine contributed to the development of this country? If not, where is the problem? Shindano Rogers from Chingora. Those are our last messages. Okay, I'm a very great leader, reader. Yes, I've been to the office and there's so many books.
Yeah, I'm very greedy. I read an average of 3 books at a time.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes, my wife says to me, why do you act as if these are not your books? Why don't you read 1 book at a time? So I read, like now I'll tell you, I'm reading a book by one of my favorite, Indian writers called Vitra Sethi. It's entitled A Suitable Boy. It's about the history of the partition of India and Pakistan, but written in a novel form. Very thick. It's about 500, I'm also reading a book by a guy called Eric Ryrie, he's a professor at the University of Oxford. It's entitled The Protestants, the radicals that changed the modern world. It's about the history of the Protestantism, starting from, way back in the 16th, 17th century with Martin Luther King, and that kind, So I'm reading 2 books now. My son-in-law, has just bought a book which he bought for me 3-4 days ago. I've also started reading it. It's entitled the Stellenbosch, mafias. The Stellenbosch, yes. Area in South Africa.
Yes.
And Stellenbosch boys.
Yes. But this is entitled the Stellenbosch mafias. How Malema has been hammering them, and that kind of. So I'm reading 3 books, at a time. And obviously, I don't forget to read the Bible, So from time to time, I go back, to read the Bible.
Especially that you are from Cafe Boys and you are taking 50-50.
Yeah, I don't want to forget, So those are the books that I'm reading. Rwandan model, there is a book which has been written by somebody. It's entitled Rwanda Incorporated. Okay, I can't remember the writer. But the title is Rwanda Incorporated. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And the theme of this book is how Kagame has tried to run the country like a limited liability company. And hence the results that we see, in Rwanda today, that is, Rwanda has nothing. It's a small mountainous country,
yes.
With hardly any resources to write home about, but Kagame has been to the White House. He met Obama, with his family. Okay, HH has only managed to meet Kamala Harris. He fell short of, 1 rung on the ladder to meet. So when you get, to the White House, it means you are being given recognition. So this book, Rwanda Incorporated is a very good book, to read, because it is also some model that Kagame has tried, to. But also what Kagame has done is to harness the human capital, the citizens of Rwanda, to be participants of that model. That's what Kagame has done. So the biggest asset for any nation are its human beings. That's the biggest asset. So if you don't know how to use the human beings, the human capital that you have, you can't succeed. It doesn't matter how many times the IMF comes, to Zambia. And it doesn't matter how much money the IMF gives to you. You need to harness your human capital. And in order to do that, you should not care about who is the UPND, you should not care, you know, who is UNIP, you should not care who is this. Get the best people, put them together, and that is what Lee Kuan Yew, the former president of Singapore, says. You know, get the best brains. Don't get, you know, worshippers, you know, that, you know, you see you at the State House every day, Igwe, as you arrive and as you are leaving. You are wasting your time. Get, you know, people that can sit, that are equals, you know, with you in terms of brainstorming of ideas, interrogating issues, defining problems, and then finding solutions, you know, to those problems. Then you can succeed. If you want the Igwe style, you just get into a mess, and the nation will not move forward.
Honorable KABIMBA, it was a pleasure having you at, you know, for our program. Dear viewers, I think you've enjoyed the program. Mr. Noah, what is your takeaways? Any takeaways?
That we should get a leaf from different governance. I would like to call them governance models, because if we're calling them economic models, that's a totally different thing. So if we can get a leaf from what is working from the East, there with the Chinese riding on the Communist Manifesto in Rwanda, harnessing its people. We talk about which other country did you mention? In Brazil. And we also go back looking at where we come from as African, our communities as community, as we lived as communities, Ubuntu, and coin our own system that even can be called the humanist system or humanism. I think that's my take for today, and I think it's been an interesting conversation with our old man, Mr.
Every time I chat with him, the problem now, because he's a lawyer, he'll start chasing me, you know.
Why is that?
I like rendering people around the 15 hours. I know that people are almost knocking off. That's when I go into the office to go and steal some knowledge. You are watching Economic Briefcase, and our guest today was Honorable WYNTER KABIMBA, President of the Economic Front. I'm sure most of you have come out with a lot of knowledge on how we can push our country forward. My co-host, Noah Njapao, was helping us with the figures and also digesting the topic. And I, your host, Lubinda Bazoka. See you next week. Continue watching Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel.